Hi, it's Sam. Welcome back to my channel. Guys, something happened. I'm so excited. Something has happened and I had to jump on camera and share it with y'all because I have been waiting for this for so long. For like around 2 years I've been waiting for this, and I promised y'all that when it happened I would do a video and share it with you, and it finally has happened. Okay, let's just get into it. I gotta show you. I gotta be very careful. First of all, you can probably see it poking in camera. This is an orchid. It goes by Psychopsis Mendenhall Hildos. It's also known as the Dancing Lady Orchid, and the blooms are known as the Dancing Lady Blooms. So I'm going to show you this, and then I'm going to go into, I have another one to show you as well. It's not Psychopsis. And then I'm going to go into orchid care just a little bit. I am not an expert. I have definitely had to learn a few things the hard way. Like basically when it comes to orchid care, I learned how to take care of them by my own mistakes and advice from others telling me what I was doing wrong. This is a newer leaf right here. So the Psychopsis, this one in particular, is the one with the beautiful reddish purple, like mottled coloration on the foliage. It's beautiful. I mean, I honestly bought this one for the foliage itself because I just thought it was so pretty. Like Phalaenopsis orchids, they grow from the crown of the plant, like in the middle. The Psychopsis, the foliage does look kind of similar to Phalaenopsis, but the growth pattern is completely different. So these actually grow from little bulbs like this, and they each get their own little bulb down in the medium that they're in. So now this one I've had for around 2 years. Here is another brand new leaf coming in right there that I just discovered today. It's growing pretty good for me. It's growing pretty quick for me. I will say this one, when I first got it, I had to figure it out, but it's always been pretty easy going. I didn't have it in the right mix at first. I didn't have any of my orchids in the right mix, and it would put out a new leaf like once every couple of months. Finally got it figured out, and I got it put in an appropriate mix, which we will go over in just a moment. It has just gradually started to put out leaves quicker and quicker and quicker. I'm just gonna get right to it because I'm terrified that I'm gonna mess this up, because if I mess this up, I will never forgive myself. Basically, this started putting out a bloom spike after I repotted it close to a year ago. I will try to look back and see if I can find any videos or photos of whenever it first pushed out the bloom spike and put an accurate timeline on the screen of like when it was. But I know it's been probably at least 6-8 months ago that it actually pushed out this bloom spike. When I seen the bloom spike, I was very excited, obviously, but I could have never anticipated that it would have taken this long to actually produce a bloom. But it's been so worth it. Let me just say that. Okay, you guys, look, I finally had my very first Dancing Lady bloom. Look how gorgeous she is. I mean, it's beautiful. I'll put some B-roll on the screen because this is not gonna do her justice. Anyways, this bloom spike started growing, and over the months, it would just grow a little bit longer, a little bit longer, a little bit longer. And then at some point it stopped. I did have this living in my kitchen window. It did well there because it gets some really bright sunshine there. It did well there for the longest time, but then winter came and we got a cold night. Okay, so there was actually what looked to be two bloom buds poking out on the tip here, and I was so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, it's happening. And we got a cold winter night, and I believe that's what messed it up, and those bloom buds fell off. Both of them completely just dropped. Done. This was about a month ago, and I was so upset. Like, oh my gosh. But I immediately like knew why this happened, so I pulled it out of that window and I moved it into my dining room, like really close to one of my Mars hydro lights. Well, it's just been pushing out new leaf after new leaf since I moved it there, and shortly after it dropped those bloom buds, another bloom bud formed. Yeah, over the last week, it started to open up. I was like, oh my gosh. And then today, a little bit ago, I was checking on some plants and I looked over, it was open. Now, it's not fully opened. It is, basically, but this little tail right here is going to open up just a wee bit more. But they're called Dancing Lady Blooms because they look like a little lady in a frilly dress spinning around. And then it also kind of looks like a little creature. If you look up close, it looks like it has a little face and everything. After I got this plant and I looked up online like what the flowers look like and watched, you know, some videos on it, it immediately became a goal of mine, even though it wasn't initially in the beginning, to get a flower on this. So this type of orchid is different because it typically only puts out one bloom at a time at the end of the bloom spike, whereas other orchids, which let me just show you, like this beautiful Phalaenopsis, this is a variegated, yellow variegated Phalaenopsis, and it also, if you get enough light, it gets a purple rim around the new foliage. It's really beautiful. This is a really happy little orchid of mine, constantly growing. This is a brand new leaf here, and it's constantly pushing out bloom spikes, giving me flowers. So we have 2 bloom spikes on this one, and if you look at the bloom spikes, you notice there's multiple flower buds on each spike, right? Okay, so that's typical for Phalaenopsis to push out multiple flowers on one bloom spike. But for the Psychopsis, they typically push out a bloom spike and you get the one beautiful, breathtaking flower at the end. It's really a statement bloom, I think. And from my understanding, these flowers can last a really long time. Now, I think they can push off like more than one flower spike and flower at a time, but it's pretty rare from what I understand. So yeah, oh no, I'm just so excited about this, you guys. I can't even. So let me tell you how I've been caring for my orchids and kind of like what I've learned. So initially, when I got my orchids, I would pot them up in a regular soil mix, not a regular soil mix, but kind of like indoor potting soil, and then I would just mix some orchid bark and like stuff for drainage in with the soil. And I actually had a subscriber tell me on one of my videos where I was repotting one of my orchids that orchids do not like regular houseplant soil, potting soil at all. So from my understanding, the reason for that is because based off of the root system of orchids in general, regular potting mix is just much too dense for these type of roots, and it can actually over time suffocate the roots and kill the plant if you put it in regular potting mix. Okay, so anyways, I was very appreciative of that tip, and so I took it up on myself a year or so ago to repot all of my orchids in orchid bark, and only a bark mix. That's what I did, and I tell you now, ever since I did that, my orchids have been so much happier. So you can see I have both of these guys in an orchid pot. And look at those beautiful healthy roots coming out. I have them in an orchid pot so I can keep an eye on the roots and just to make sure there's plenty of drainage. And yeah, I don't know, I just love them so much. So a little tip: don't put your orchids in houseplant potting soil. Use an orchid mix, or sphagnum moss is also appropriate from what I've heard. They like sphagnum moss, or you can throw some sphagnum moss in the orchid bark and they'll probably like that too. Orchids do not like to have wet feet. They don't like to be standing in water. So my orchids are pretty vocal whenever they're thirsty. The foliage, kind of like a Hoya, will get soft and flexible. Just wait until I notice that. I wait until I notice the leaves getting a little bit wrinkly or soft or flexible. You know, they should be more thick and firm whenever they don't need a water. We have a new root coming out right here too. Look at that, so cute. I fertilize my plants pretty regularly, honestly, and I give them all basically the same type of fertilizer. Now I typically use a brand, it's like a phytoplankton type fertilizer, and it is by Markville. I get it on Amazon. I haven't had any of that for a while, so I've just been using Super Thrive. I believe it's Super Thrive. And also, I heard that orchids like to be a little bit more on the root bound side. Like, they don't want to be root bound, but they like to be a little bit snug in their pots. And that's what I've learned to be true with mine. You can see here, this orchid actually does have some sphagnum moss in the mix, and the rest is just bark, charcoal, and large chunks of perlite, coarse perlite. This one, I don't think have any sphagnum moss in it. It's strictly orchid bark and chunky perlite. I also do use worm castings and chunks of charcoal. I had to share this with you. I wanted to do a full video. I'm gonna do a little short on it as well because I'm just so over the moon excited. I wanted to document this because I've been waiting forever, you guys, and it's been totally worth the wait. It did not disappoint. I'm just overjoyed with how gorgeous this is. I'm terrified that me like moving it around and handling it is going to snap the flower or mess up the flower, so I'm trying to be really careful because you can see it's quite flimsy. I'm gonna put her down now. Okay, it's 2 days later The flower has fully opened. You can see the little wings, if you will, are kind of back like a butterfly, and the tail has opened up. I just wanted to give a little update after it fully opened. It's so beautiful. It reminds me of a little butterfly or a fairy or some type of little winged creature. But I wanted to mention lighting for orchids. If you look on Google, it's going to tell you that they prefer bright indirect light, which can mean a multitude of things. In my experience, they really like bright light. So when I had them in lower light settings, they really didn't grow or bloom very much. And also, I find that the medium that they're in doesn't dry out as quickly, which can lead to root rot. In my experience, my orchids really love direct light. Now, you don't want to put them in anything too strong or bright because you can burn the leaves, but you're going to get some warnings before that happens. You're going to get like, this orchid's not a great example because it already has purplish red on it naturally. But if you give direct light to an orchid, the leaves are going to turn really purple, like a Hoya, really similar to a Hoya. Really purple before they burn, purplish red. Rather than indirect light, I just find that my orchids grow better and flower more frequently in direct light. I'm never going to get over this bloom. That's pretty much it. That's all I wanted to share. I also do clean the leaves of my orchids regularly. I dust them regularly because they're thick and they've got little dips in them so they can collect dust, which makes a difference in the amount of sunlight they're able to take in. So I do dust the leaves. I spray them off with water sometimes. Sometimes I use neem oil. Sometimes I use insecticidal soap, and they do great. I don't really struggle that much with pests. When it comes to my orchids, I seem to be pretty pest hardy and resistant, even when they're like right in the middle of the war zone. When I have like a bad outbreak of spider mites or something, I do treat them, but I never really have any damage or issues from pests on my orchids. That's pretty much it. I just wanted to share and document this. I told you I would, and I want to be able to look back on it. So, okay, that's it. I'm gonna go. If you enjoyed this video, be sure and give it a thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed if you would like. Hit the notification bell if you want to. And I'll see you again really soon in my next video. I love you guys so much. Bye.